week 6 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few players I look to sell and trade this week. The first guy, David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. And David Montgomery, what a resurgence this year in his first season with Detroit. And Detroit knew what they were doing, obviously. Williams walking free agency, traded DeAndre Swift to the Eagles, even though he's been solid for that Eagle team. And then you saw Montgomery and draft the rookie Jahmyr Gibbs. So David Montgomery, first 2 weeks of the season had solid games, and the last 2 weeks he's really had monster games now. Week 4, Green Bay, 32 carries, 121 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 catches, 20 yards. And Week 5 versus the Panthers, 19 carries, 109 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches, 20 yards. So right now, Montgomery, he's been playing great football. He's definitely taken over the backfield over Jahmyr Gibbs in this Detroit Lion offense. But I just don't think it's going to keep up for Montgomery. Throughout his career, he's been a little bit injury prone. We saw it last season, miss a few games, one earlier this season in Week 3. And right now, I know he fits this offense well, but he's not really a running back that I could trust down the stretch here, especially with Jahmyr Gibbs. They did pick him for a reason. Number 12 overall is the Detroit Lion team. So right now, while Montgomery's healthy and playing great football, I'm not saying to sell him off just for anything, but I just don't see him keeping up these numbers. And as the year goes on, I see Jahmyr Gibbs getting more work and being an explosive back as well in this offense. Next play is Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins. No doubt about it, Mostert's been great for this Miami Dolphin team. A few things where I think I would sell him high is Raheem Mostert. We know throughout his career, he's been injury prone, barely has ever played a full season in his NFL career. And now Devon Achane, he's come out of nowhere. He's the rookie running back and one of the most explosive and quicker backs already in the league, and he's already losing a lot of work to him over the last 3 weeks. So the last few weeks here for Mostert, Week 3 versus Denver, 13 carries, 82 yards, 3 touchdowns, 7 catches, 60 yards, a touchdown. Then Week 4, Buffalo, only 7 carries, 9 yards, 3 catches, 36 yards, a fumble loss. And then Week 5 versus the Giants, he still had 10 carries, 65 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches, 13 yards, but that's about it. Only 12, 15 touches a game he's getting. Achane, I know he's getting about the same. This is a pass-first offense with Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, the main men on the offense. But right now, like I said, with injury concerns throughout his career, and Achane really taking over this backfield, averaging like 10 yards a carry, something crazy like that. I don't think Mostert's a player that's going to hold up the remainder of the season. And he's losing work, like I said, weekly. So right now, he's a player I would sell out. The next play is Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Dallas Goedert, the first 4 weeks of the season, pretty much pedestrian and non-existent numbers. And then he broke out finally versus the Los Angeles Rams in Los Angeles in Week 5 with a monster game, 8 catches, 117 receiving yards, and a touchdown. I know he's got a good matchup at the Jets Week 6 that give up the most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. But right now, Dallas Goedert, he had the monster game. But like I said, he pretty much didn't do anything the first month of the season, where he even had a goose egg in Week 1 at the Patriots. So right now, while he's coming off a monster game at the Los Angeles Rams, is Goedert, where there's a lot of mouths to feed, obviously. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, even Swift out of the backfield. He's not going to be a consistent playmaker and putting up huge numbers like he did in that Week 5 game. So right now, after coming off a huge performance, and he almost was a tight end that was benchable as Goedert, this is a perfect time to sell him high, because I think we're going to see what we've been seeing from Goedert, a few 7-8 point games, couple games lower scoring than that, and then he'll have that big pop game every 3 or 4 weeks like he did in this one. So right now, while he's at peak value, coming off a monster game, over 100 yards with a touchdown, I would sell him this week. The next play is DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. So DJ Moore, what a ball game it was for him, and he's been solid, no doubt about it, for this Bear team in his first season this year with them is DJ Moore. But he's another player that I would sell him high, especially at this peak value, coming off 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. I doubt he's going to do that again this season, is DJ Moore. I know he's got a great matchup in Week 6 versus the Minnesota Vikings. That can't stop anyone this season. But DJ Moore, the last 2 games have been his best games of the season. Week 4 versus Denver, 8 catches, 131 yards, a touchdown. And Week 5 at Washington, 8 catches, 230 yards, like I mentioned, and 3 touchdowns, which Moore could have been on that table as well. There was one play down the sidelines where it didn't look like he was out of bounds, but they called him out, or he would have had another touchdown in that one. So DJ Moore, no doubt, playing great football, but he's not a player I think is going to keep it up at this level as a number 1 wide receiver for fantasy owners. So right now, coming off of 2 monster games and at peak value where you could get a nice 2-for-1 deal, or even trade him for a stud running back like a Bijan Robinson possibly, this would be the time to do it this week. I'm not saying dump them for anything, but while these guys were at peak value and playing over their head, their players to sell, the next play is Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Travis Kelce, he got banged up in the Week 5 game versus the Minnesota Vikings, slipping on one of his catches, and it looked like his leg just gave out, his foot as well, and one bent. But he came back into the game, and he finished once again with a big one, 10 catches, 67 yards and a touchdown. So we know Travis Kelce, best tight end in fantasy football and in the NFL right now. Good matchup coming up Thursday Night Football versus the Broncos. But there's also a possibility where he was running on adrenaline in that game when he came back and obviously toughed it out with Travis Kelce. So it's a good matchup versus Denver. But right now we've seen Kelce hurt twice this season. Week 1 in practice, he got hurt, hyperextended the knee. Luckily, it was only that he came back. And then now in Week 5 at Minnesota with the foot injury, they wrapped him up and he toughed it out, like I said. So right now he is 34 years old. A lot of miles on his body, a lot of receptions, a lot of tackles taken. And if you could get a decent guy before the other shoe drops and possibly gets hurt as Kelce now with 2 leg injuries so far this season, but nothing major seriously, this would be the time to do it because, like I said, top tight end in fantasy football. You could get a great running back, I believe, in a deal or a wide receiver, or even a quarterback and another tight end if you need those positions. So right now, well, Kelce, to me, it could go either way with him, where one more bed planting, he could be out for the season with the knee or something like that. Well, his lower body's been weak over the last few weeks with 2 injuries now, and I would sell him on. The next play is DeAndre Hopkins of the Tennessee Titans. So DeAndre Hopkins, he finally broke out with his new team in the Tennessee Titans. And Hopkins, he just has a great track record versus the Indianapolis Colts in his career. But this season, he's only had 3 games at double-digit fantasy points and pretty much non-impact fantasy games. So right now, after coming off 8-catch, 140-yard game with 22 fantasy points on 11 targets, he's a guy I'm definitely going to look to sell this week. Here's Hopkins. I think he's lost some speed. I know he's in a pretty bad offense, one of the worst offensive lines in the league. And Ryan Tannehill, he's just not an accurate quarterback. A lot of inaccurate throws. Hopkins, teams, they're zeroing in on him because there's not really a number 2 threat in this offense. I thought they thought it would be Traylon Burks, but he's been out and didn't do anything early in the season. And right now, Hopkins is a sell-high player, so he's got a game in Week 6 and then a bye week. So right now is the perfect time to sell him coming off a big game like this is Hopkins. I know people drafted him 5th, 6th round hoping he'd be solid, but like I said, only 3 games over double-digit fantasy points and not much impact, with this being easily the biggest game of the year for him with 22 points in PPR league. So right now, coming off a nice game and not a player I have much confidence in a pretty bad offense, he's a player I would look to sell and trade this week. And the final player I look to sell is Adam Thelen of the Carolina Panthers. Adam Thelen, he's been Mr. Garbage Time, and he's had a resurgence this season, no doubt about it, with the Carolina Panthers, especially the last 3 weeks. Is Thelen. Week 3 at Seattle, 11 catches, 145 yards, a touchdown. Week 4 versus Minnesota, 7 catches, 76 yards. And then Week 5 at Detroit, some garbage time like I mentioned towards the end of that one. 11 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown. So Adam Thielen, the number 1 target with this Carolina Panther team. But it wouldn't be surprising to me if we see Thielen traded at the trade deadline in a few weeks here, with a team that needs a wide receiver. So right now, while there's nothing going on in Carolina and he's playing great football and getting peppered with targets, I just don't see it keeping up the whole season. Last season was a total train wreck for Thielen, with injuries and not making plays beside Justin Jefferson, which is hard to believe. And this season, it's just getting peppered with targets, and a guy who's a veteran that the young quarterback, Bryce Young, is obviously focusing on and forcing it to him. So right now, playing great football, but like I said, this season he's got 3 games of 20 or more fantasy points. I just don't see it keeping up for Thielen. So Week 6, good matchup at the Dolphins where they'll be trailing. Then he goes on by, and I think this is a time to sell him high. I'm not saying dump him for anything, but a guy who you pretty much didn't draft and picked up as a free agent early in the season. And if you could flip him for a running back or something which is more needy of a position this season, this would be the time to do it. So that's a few plays I look to sell and trade in Week 6 of the fantasy football season.